Madam, we are live now.
Thank you, Praveen.
Ishita, you can start.
Yes, Ishita?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please begin.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get the show on the road, Dr. Gargi Mitra, Head Symbiosis Central Directorate, would like to share a few words with us. Over to you, Gargi, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ishita. A very good afternoon to Dr. Nilesh Mahale, Dr. Girija, Mrs. Sangeeta Rishi Pathak, the amazingly brilliant student team who are representing the different Symbiosis schools. That is, to name them specifically, Symbiosis International School, Symbiosis School Prabhat Road, Pune, Symbiosis School Nashik, and our Pune Police Public School at Shivaji Nagar. A very good afternoon to all the different students, teachers, and parents who have joined us live on YouTube. And yes, I cannot forget the brilliant team that I just mentioned. To name them specifically, we have with us today Ishita Godse, Rajeshwari Dikshit, Ananya Ramprasad, Sharanya Mahajan, Sumed Patil, Khushi, Saransh Malhotra, and Aryan Padhe. I hope I have not missed any of them. Thank you so much and a very warm welcome to each one of you. I'm very happy, Dr. Nilesh, to welcome you today on behalf of Symbiosis School Central Directorate and Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing. Though this is a virtual welcome, sir, I hope that soon we shall be able to welcome each one of you physically to our school campuses, of course, and including you as well. So I'm completely aware, sir, how busy your normal day looks like, but I'm extremely delighted that you have made it today and you have accepted our invitation so graciously. Thank you. I am indeed thankful for that. The very purpose, sir, of our today's program is, of course, to sensitize our young learners about the frontline fighters of COVID, especially in the medical field. But I'm sure that you are going to get more than that questions and many more questions related to that, which you will have to respond. Sir, just to let you know that we have just completed our Golden Jubilee year at Symbiosis. And although this coincided with the global impact of the pandemic, we have ensured one thing. We have ensured at Symbiosis schools, colleges, and universities that the learning continues, and our students at all levels of education, whether it is pre-primary or secondary, they do not, the learning is not hampered. The learning goes on smoothly. And with the blessings of our dear founder and president, Dr. S.B. Majumdar, sir, and the guidance given by our principal director, Dr. Vidya Yerodekar, madam, we at Symbiosis have never ever shied away from trying out something new every now and then. Why I'm telling that today also is not an exception. As you are very well aware that the reins of today's discussion and the complete event has been taken over by the talented students of our Symbiosis schools. And well, this is how we have conceptualized it. But I must also tell you that this is the first of its kind virtual event that we are having at Symbiosis schools, and extremely delighted and proud that this day is happening today. So today's show is by the students and for the students. We believe that knowing is just one part of learning. When we teach in our schools, we see to it that they know it. But then if this knowing is not converted into doing, I think this knowledge stands useless. So we are preparing through this event our students so that they can enrich themselves. And I'm sure, prior to joining, we were having a discussion with the students. They all are pretty excited about this event. They all are pretty, well prepared for this. And they've also shared that it was a wonderful learning experience. So dear students, today is your day. I will not keep this you waiting any longer. And before I leave, I would also want to thank and acknowledge the efforts taken by Mrs. Sangeeta Rishi Pathak and Medha to groom our students and this wonderful team for today's event. Thank you, students. Thank you, Team SKU. And over to you, children. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ishita Godse from Symbiosis Secondary School, Prabhat Road, and I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude towards all of you who decided to join us today. This event is a collaboration between Symbiosis schools, and it's my honor to introduce all of the members of our amazing team. Let me introduce my friend Sumed Patil from Symbiosis Secondary School, Prabhat Road.
Hello everyone.
Next up, we have Ananya Ramprasad and Saransh Malhotra from Symbiosis International School, Viman Nagar.
Hi everyone.
Hi guys.
From Symbiosis School, Nashik, we have Khushi Kucheria and Sharanya Mahajan.
Hello everyone.
And last, but certainly not the least, we have Rajeshwari Dikshit and Aryan Padhe from Pune Police Public School.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So, without wasting any more time, let's get this event rolling with a musical performance by Rajeshwari.
Good afternoon, everyone. The song I'm going to perform was originally sung by the legendary singer Mukeshi in an old classical movie. We all are going to a challenging phase, and I would like to express my feelings through this song. किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है। किसी की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, किसी का दर्द मिल सके तो ले उधार, किसी के वास्ते हो तेरे दिल में प्यार, जीना इसी का नाम है। ग ग प स नि ग ग प द प ग प म प ग प म प ग म रे ग सा ग ग प स नि ग ग प द प ग प म प ग प म प ग म रे ग सा प म द प म ग प म ग रे ग रे सा रे सा रे सा रे ग प. Thank you.
That was lovely, Rajeshwari. What a wonderful way to start this session. Now, without further ado, Ananya, that's your cue.
Thank you, Ishita. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ananya and this is Sumed, and we will be your anchors today. We would like to extend a very warm welcome to all the Symbiosis School principals, teachers, students, and parents present here today. In addition, we'd like to thank the Symbiosis School Central Directorate, SSCD, and Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing, SKU, for giving us this unique opportunity to showcase our gratitude towards the doctors.
The pandemic has taken a lot from us, our ability to travel, work, and just carry on as usual. But that doesn't mean that all is lost. In fact, the pandemic has given us the opportunity to conduct a session like this.
But what is this session about, you may ask? We are here to talk about doctors and Doctors' Day, which was celebrated on the 1st of July.
Doctors' Day marks the birth and death anniversary of the great physician and first and the second Chief Minister of West Bengal, Dr. Bidhan Chandra.
I think what Sumit was trying to say was Dr. Bidhan Chandra Roy. Despite the second wave of COVID-19 bringing along anxiety and stress, doctors are still out there every single day, risking their lives just so the rest of us can be healthy and live risk-free. In times like these, doctors are basically superheroes.
Precisely. Doctors are out there fighting COVID-19 like heroes in our favorite comics fight bad guys. They are the Spider-Man to Dr. Octopus or the Iron Man to...
But this doesn't mean that they aren't still human. The pandemic has affected not only the physical health, but also the emotional well-being of people from every walk of life, and doctors are no exception.
It can be easy to forget this reality, but that doesn't make it any less true. That is why we've invited a doctor to join us here today and share his experiences and answer the questions that we're all riddled with.
It is our privilege to have Dr. Nilesh Mahale here with us today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend with all of us.
I now request Sharanya to introduce Dr. Nilesh Mahale, sir.
I'm immensely delighted as it is indeed an honor to introduce Dr. Nilesh Mahale, sir, a consultant intensivist at Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, Pune, and a visiting ICU consultant in Australia. Dr. Nilesh Mahale did his fellowship in critical care medicine in Australia, has a European diploma in intensive care, Indian diploma in critical care medicine in intensive care, and MD anesthesia from KEM Hospital, Mumbai. He is affiliated with the College of Critical Care Medicine Australia, European Society of Critical Care Medicine, the ECMO Society India, the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine, and the Indian Society of Anesthesiologists. He is also a specialist in ECMO and extracorporeal therapies and is a simulation instructor at CMS, Harvard, USA. He is an EDIC clinical examiner and a course director for ECMO and ACE, that is anesthesia, critical care, and emergency medicine workshops. Without any further delay, I would request Sir to share his views and experiences with all of us before we move into the question and answer round of the session. Over to you, Sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, thanks for having me and thanks for this introduction. I feel really overwhelmed and by this and feel proud to be of the healthcare, to be a part of the healthcare sector. Today, I'm in front of you as one of the representatives of all the courageous frontline fighters working in the healthcare industry, namely the doctors, nurses, the allied healthcare staff, the multi-purpose workers, who are an integral part of fight against this COVID for the last 1.5 years in India, who have been working incessantly with full dedication and passion to fight against this menace, COVID-19, which has changed the way we have been living our lives. I'm personally of the opinion that not only the members of the healthcare industry, but every one of us is actually a frontline fighter in a way and have been fighting and overcoming the challenges posed by COVID-19 in our day-to-day lives. My heart goes out to the entire education sector, and I sincerely appreciate the efforts of all the schools, teachers, parents, and especially wonderful students like you who have embraced a new way of teaching and learning so efficiently within such a short span of time, which is in no way less than being a frontline fighter, fighting or overcoming a different kind of struggle, I would say. So let's first of all, before we go ahead with my journey, let's put our hands together for each one of you all wonderful, students, teachers, and parents from the education sector. So, as I said, thanks for inviting me for this, today's session. If I have to share my experience or my journey during the COVID pandemic, going down the memory lane, I would start off with I was in Australia in December 2019, where I work as a ICU consultant for 6 to 8 weeks in a year. When I first heard about this dreadful disease, COVID-19, which has changed our lives forever, isn't it? My initial thoughts were of kind of denial, that should I be bothered? Will it affect me or my family or my work or my day-to-day life, my travel? My denial phase was very much short-lived. And I got my answer very soon when the first case of COVID in India was detected in March 2020. And we at DMH had our first patient admitted in our ICU in the 3rd week of March 2020. And since then, the life has not been the same. We were anyways anticipating patients in our hospital as early because our hospital has always been in the forefront for all the pandemics in the past and have an excellent track record with the H1N1 pandemic, and is a very well-known hospital for all the complicated cases that get referred to us in all the faculties. We had started our preparations. I still remember our first day, initial phase, before we got our first patient. We had started off preparing for this pandemic using simulation-based techniques. I being a simulation instructor, I think that came handy as well. Sim-based training, I would say, is helpful whenever one is trying to learn a new skill. One is trying to sharpen your own reflexes, and also helps with systemic desensitization, which could be both physical and mental, by doing the same thing again and again. The sims which we included were like as simple as how one would receive a patient in the emergency department, how one should be doing the RT-PCR test, how one should safely collect the blood samples or all the other samples from such a patient without getting infected yourself. isolation of such patients. And the most important thing which we practiced was the correct use of the PPEs, which was the only armamentarium which we had against this unknown predator. I still remember one of our sims in which we were all dressed up in the PPEs, and we were trying to simulate a scene in which we are taking care of a patient in ICU, but none of us could recognize each other, because in that PPE everyone looks the same, and it's so difficult to talk with all the gears, and it's hardly audible. That time we realized to avoid confusion, one should also have some labels as your name labels, or you should tag yourself with some kind of a label so that everyone knows who the other person is and can give the right instructions while looking after the patient. We also practiced, simulation for our nurses, giving oxygen, giving medicine to these patients, how one should look after this patient on the ventilator, waste disposal of such patients. And different faculties practice their own domain cases, just like the obstetricians practice their cases, the orthopedicians practice their cases, and so on and so forth. But no matter, how much one prepares using simulation-based techniques, we all do get goosebumps on the D-Day, when you actually have to face the challenge, isn't it? I think most of the students would agree with me, except for some nerdy ones, who just feel that just bring it on and, it's okay, it's all done, we are all good. So March 26, 2020 was the D-Day for us. Our first COVID patient was admitted in our ICU. It was like, lights, camera, action. It was time to rock and roll, so whatever we had learned, whatever we had practiced in the preceding couple of days or maybe weeks together, it was time to put forth into action. Though it was the same job profile for most of us, which we do it day in and day out, for almost so many years of our lives, but the circumstances were different. The following were the challenges that we faced as medical care professionals. First and foremost, getting into that PPE and working with that PPE itself was a Herculean task. Initially, we had those full body PPEs, with double masks, the face shields, for maximum protection, which made it difficult not only to, sit down, stand up, walk, to talk, and sometimes also to breathe. Few of us used to feel lightheaded, and one of my colleagues was on the verge of really collapsing whilst working in the ICU. So getting into that PPE as well as coming out of it was equally difficult, because one has to be really keeping in mind the fact that, once your PPE is infected, one has to really take PPE out very carefully, otherwise there's a risk of you getting infected. So simple thing like having a sip of water or just going to the washroom itself used to be a Herculean task, with that PPE on. Second thing was the anticipatory anxiety, which we all have for something which we don't know. We didn't know much about COVID at that point of time in March 2020. We still have got certain challenges in front of us, but that time we all were quite novice towards it. The anxiety which we realized was not only just for ourselves, for our own health, but it was also for our family members at home. Each one of us have got elderly parents at home, spouse, kids. And as there were so many unknown things about this nasty disease, I realized we as Indians, have got a very strong emotional quotient, sometimes more than our intelligent quotient as well. But I would say this is true only for the people who are born below the mobile phone era. Just kidding, guys. We all are equally emotional. Otherwise, my kids won't take me home today. We try to put others, before we put ourselves. I don't know whether that's the right thing to do or not. But our mind is full of the what if questions, which keep on haunting us, and they predominate that. What if, something happens to your parent? What happens because of me? So, you start having this kind of a guilt feelings as well as that anticipatory anxiety in your mind. Few of our doctors, I remember, used to stay back in the hospital because we used to have a week on shift in the COVID ICU. So during that time, we used to just, many doctors used to stay back in the hospital and not go home. The hospital had made the provision for the doctors and the nursing staff and people to stay back. Few stayed back for months together till the time things started unfolding about this disease. I remember one of my colleagues, she stayed back for almost 3 to 4 months in the hospital. We used to jovially tell her to keep a photograph of her as a photo frame in the house, for her kids and her family to recognize her once she goes back. With all these thoughts in our mind, we had our first departmental meeting after 2 months of being into the pandemic. And I think things started changing after that. We call it a went out meeting, during which we, besides discussing about our patient management and how we are going with our patient care, we actually discussed about ourselves. We discussed about what are the thoughts going on in our minds, what's going on. And we were really surprised to know that, whatever I was going through or my colleague was going through, most of the people were going through the same feelings, the same emotions, the same anticipatory anxiety. So we all decided, instead of just talking about the problem, we should talk about the solution. And this is what I tell my kids, and I guess it's important for you students to embrace it as well. So first of all, just talk it out. You'll be surprised to know that when you talk about your own problem and, with other your peers or to your teachers, you will not get an instant solution to it, but you may be, surprised to know that this is normal to feel that way, and you may yourself be able to find a solution for it. And also I've realized there are three kinds of people, in our human race. One, who always talks about the problems. Second, who finds solutions to a problem. And third, which are, they find problems in the solution given to a problem as well. So one has to just choose what you want to look at. But as it is said, the world needs all kinds of people, to make it a wonderful place. Few of our colleagues also went through the loss of their dear and near ones, which was truly emotionally draining, not only for them, but also shook our confidence, which we have gathered over a period of time. Therein, we also realized and, emphasized, I would say, the importance of our own family or having your own family, isn't it? And also how insignificant all the materialistic thoughts or our ego fights are there in life. This reminded me, this particular pandemic in the beginning, when we were going through all these phases and emotions, reminded me of a wonderful book which I was introduced by one of my colleagues whilst I was in Australia. This is a book which I would recommend to most of the school students, parents, teachers. It's a book written by an Australian author called Bronnie Wall, who used to work as a palliative carer. Palliative carer is a person who works with people who are dying, tries to support them. And the name of the book essentially is The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, a Life Transformed by the Dearly Departing. She talks about the 5 regrets. This person was very close to people who were about to die, and death is something which is inevitable. So the 5 things which she has put forth are, which these people actually told her about. First and foremost, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected me to live. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I had let myself be more happier. And the last one, I wish I had not worked so hard. Worth reflecting, isn't it? Anyways, sorry to digress, but I just thought, this is something which came to my mind, whilst I was thinking about what all things were going in my mind during this pandemic. As there were challenges for the medical fraternity, I would say our patients and their family members went through more or less similar challenges. This was the first time in the history of Indian healthcare that the patients were kept away from their family members, who could not come in and visit them or even see them on day-to-day basis. And they were looked after by strangers who were, with masks on their face, who were barely recognizable. Equally distressing was for the family members not being able to see their loved ones on day-to-day basis and having the constant fear in their mind that whether they have acquired the disease as well. As they say, being negative is the new positive in today's era, isn't it? So this helped us to come up with a the facility of having use of technology, making video calls to the family members. We used to make video calls using the WhatsApp every day. The doctor, I mean, if I was looking after the patient, I used to give the call to the family member, introduce myself, talk to them, show them their patient, and get the patient to talk to them if the patient was in a position to talk. So that was quite reassuring for the patients and the patient's family members as well. Also, clearly and distinctly remember an incident in which a patient was transferred from a PMC hospital to our hospital, wherein he had stayed in that hospital for almost close to 7 days, was getting clinically worsening, and had mentally given up. He was of the thoughts that he's not going to get better, and that's why he was transferred to our hospital for further care. I remember that when I first met him and I touched him to examine him, he was amazed and astonished, as no one in the previous hospital had actually touched him in the last 7 days. Because I think people in their own, even the medical fraternity had their own anxiety, as I told you. It's not easy to go in the initial phases. It's not easy to overcome those, Most of the people are worried about themselves catching the disease. Shortage of PPEs in few of the hospitals kept them away from the patients. So this patient, who stayed with us for the next 7 to 10 days, progressively got better and was discharged home. It was obviously the entire treatment put together. Along with that, I would say the impact of therapeutic touch, which I think gave him the impetus to fight against this illness and to put forth his best efforts. Unfortunately, with this particular pandemic and the COVID disease, the patients do have to contribute almost 40 to 50% of the contribution has to come from the patient in getting better, not only physically, but having a mental and a positive mental framework about his own well-being and getting better till the end. Then came the phase in which our COVID, we went through a peak between July to September, which was really a havoc phase in our lives. That phase, our first, I would say the first COVID peak in India and in our hospital as well, ended in September. The cases had started to dwindle thereafter, and the lockdown was gradually opening up. We had gone through so much, we decided to do something for ourselves. We came up with a WhatsApp group in which we have decided and we still do it. We play cricket, every Sunday for 2 hours. We also try and go for trekking sometimes. This has helped us with our emotional upliftment, emphasizing the importance of sports and leisure activities in our day-to-day lives. We've also published, we've taken this time and opportunity to publish 2 COVID-related articles in the Indian Journal of Critical Care Medicine. But as they say, our honeymoon period was quite short-lived. We were stuck with the second wave of COVID in Feb 2021, which is still ongoing. There was a major difference between the first and the second wave, I would say. Most importantly, the age group of the patients affected. The first wave predominantly had patients who were in the elderly age group, I would say 60 and above. The 60 is not considered to be elderly nowadays, but 60 and with comorbidities. Losing them to disease was equally distressing, but nothing as compared to the losses that we've seen during the second wave of COVID, wherein we have had patients younger than us, treating doctors, who have passed away, as well as patients dying because of non-availability of beds in the hospital, which we all have heard about these news, isn't it? It was really emotionally disturbing to see parents crying for the loss of their children, spouse, overwhelmed and distressed because of their family member, of her husband or wife being in the hospital, kids losing their parents, and family losing their breadwinners. I really cannot imagine what kind of life these families would be living after such a blow to their lives. Has left a scar on our minds as well. which will take a long time, I think, to heal. So we had, whenever we are distressed, what do? We talk it out. With our next meeting, we all learned the new mantra in life, especially truth. And I would say that is true for all circumstances in our life, Try your best, hope for the best, and at somewhere in the back of your mind, one has to prepare for the worst. So I think with this thought process, that helped us to calm down ourselves and not go through the emotional turmoil that, we could not save our patients because it was really very distressing. Then came the ray of hope, the vaccination process, which started this year and which was rolled out for doctors with the healthcare professionals from the month of March onwards. I got completely vaccinated on 27th of April and without any side effects. This has not only boosted my confidence, but all the doctors who have got been vaccinated have their confidence really boosted up. And also this gives you a vaccine passport to travel as well. Would strongly recommend all the eligible candidates to get jabbed, as I would say this is the only thing which will bring back to the Achhe Din for most of us. To conclude, talking to you today about my experience, which I've just tried to put forth in a nutshell, has brought about a flashback. I just went through a flashback of last 1.5 years. Went through those emotions as well. I feel good that we are working as a team, could bring about a change in the lives of many, though we have failed with some of them. But at the end, I'm really proud to be a part of the healthcare sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable experience with us.
So the efforts and hard work that you have put in to help COVID patients and their families in these alarming and frightening and entirely unprecedented times is honestly incredible. You have consistently put yourself at risk to help others. Your bravery, the sacrifices that you've made, the sacrifices the entire medical community has made, and your unending compassion is truly an inspiration to all of us.
Doctors and nurses are really the unsung heroes of this pandemic. Not only have they been working hard to keep us safe, but they have also been like a ray of hope, guiding every patient in despair through these dark times. And on that note, we will now proceed towards the question and answer round.
Hello, sir. My first question to you is, we have just experienced the second wave of COVID-19, which really created a havoc. It is
I think what she's trying to say is that we predict that the third wave is going to be a little bad for children especially. And what are your thoughts on the same? We would like to know that, please.
Sorry, I just missed the initial part of the question. Could you just repeat that again?
Yeah, she was talking about how the second wave has been really, really bad for all of us and how we predict the third wave to come anytime soon. And this is supposed to hit children pretty bad. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on the same.
Sure. Yeah, I was told about the question and answer session. I always, it gives me a goosebump getting questions from the students and, kids because of the innocent doubts which they have in their mind. Always, can put you on an edge. Most of the parents would agree with this, isn't it? Before I answer any of these questions, I would just like to declare that I am not a subject expert in pediatrics. So whatever I would be saying today is based on our departmental meetings, the podcasts, and all the webinars which we attend to keep ourselves up to date. During this COVID time, I would say the most, and in the present era, the most talked about thing essentially is the COVID's third wave and Amir Khan's third wave, isn't it? My wife may not be happy with this. Essentially, she's an entire Amir Khan fan. So far, essentially, with all the studies, which have been put forth, to taking the first and the second wave into consideration, the children under the age of 18 years represent only close to 8.5% of the reported cases, with a very low case fatality rate. That means that the mortality or the death rate in these children was very, very low. In fact, there has been a study done by the Indian Council of Medical Research and the Imperial College UK London, in which they have used modeling studies based on the patients in the first wave, the second wave, and the number of children involved, and they have predicted that the third wave is unlikely to be very, very severe for children. That is based on certain modeling factors which they look into. They also look into the seropositivity, that is the number of patients turning out to be positive in the first and the second wave. It's for the children between 2 to 17 years. They noticed that the seropositivity rate in the first and the second wave put together for children was close to 57%, and for adults during the same time was 63%. So what it tells us essentially is that in the first two waves, if the amount of seropositivity was more or less similar to the adults, and the number of patients admitted were less than 8.5% with a very, very low case fatality rate, it's unlikely that the third wave is going to be disastrous for the children. They also look in that modeling in the modeling studies, they also looked at the mortality in the first and the second wave, and it was close to just 0.25 and 0.3% for children. So I would say that yes, third wave is predicted somewhere in September if we go by our modeling studies in India. But it's unlikely that it's going to be having any different kind of a manifestation for children under the age of 18, which we have seen in the first two waves as well. This could be based on certain things like, the risk of, which again has been found in the studies done, the transmissibility is less amongst the children. The production of aerosols is relatively less, as well as certain receptors in children where this COVID virus attacks is less in children. So that makes them less susceptible to a very severe kind of an infection.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
I hope I've answered the question asked.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you.
So the next question is, are children underlying with medical conditions like diabetes, asthma, then childhood obesity safe in this pandemic? And sir, please also tell that what precautions should they be taking?
Good question. Again, based on studies which have been done and the literature which is available, we know that COVID is quite severe in adults having comorbidities, the one which you have just mentioned, all of them included. Similar thing has also been found in children. Though I mentioned as in the previous question that most of the children end up having a mild to asymptomatic disease, severe diseases are also seen in children, and particularly in children with comorbidities, which you just mentioned. A part of a group of constellation of symptoms are the most severe kind of a disease, which is called as the the inflammatory syndrome, the multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which is seen in children, has also been found in children who've got more so in children who've got comorbidities. To answer your question, what precautions they should be taking? Whatever disease that you have, that has to be kept under control, obviously. If you are a diabetic, a child with diabetic, the diabetes or sugar control should be good. Blood pressure should be good. Obviously, if your obesity is there, one has to try and do exercises, which most of the people have taken up during this pandemic. Besides that, the importance of other supportive care like a good healthy nutrition, good exercise schedule, vitamin D. I think all these things put together, besides the universal precautions of SMS, that is social distancing, masking yourself, isn't it, and hand sanitizers, which will be there for a while for all of us to follow, even if you don't like it.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
So, my next question to you is,
Currently, Indian adults are administered with Covishield and Covaxin. The clinical trial for Bharat Biotech's Covaxin, has begun in Nagpur for the age group of 12 to 18 years. When can we expect the vaccine for us?
Well, that's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, I think most of the kids would be waiting for that thing to be rolled out, especially seeing your friends from United States getting the jab, especially because US Pfizer is being given for the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine is being given to children between the age group of 12 to 18. So Bharat Biotech, which is the manufacturer of Covaxin, has been given permission by the DGCI to initiate a trial for the vaccine. Now they have actually divided the trial age groups into 3 groups. It is 12 to 18, 6 to 12, and 6 months to 6 years as well. According to the officials from the Bharat Biotech itself, the trials for the age group of 12 to 18 have already started in June. And the trials for the other children will be starting soon as well. So I think it may take, as and before the vaccine gets rolled out to children, it has to go through certain safety measures and certain safety checks. So I think it's there in the pipeline, but it's difficult to predict at this point of time when it would be available, because the trials have just started last month. So I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact time frame, but anywhere between next 3 to 6 months, one should be hopeful of having some kind of a vaccine for children.
Okay, thanks for answering that, sir.
Sir, speaking about the vaccine makes me think, why is it that some people have a minor reaction to the vaccine as compared to others who are sometimes completely bedridden or even hospitalized?
Right. Good question. As we know that no two human beings are alike, isn't it? So mild to moderate reaction or to any kind of vaccine is known for centuries together. Like we all have taken vaccine as children, and there are certain side effects of all the vaccines which are known and predictable. Particularly true for the COVID vaccine. It has been found that the patients who already had contracted the disease, have recovered out of it, and then who take the vaccine, as well as people with a slightly bulkier muscle mass, it has been noticed that these group of people have had certain the reaction which was seen in these people were stronger in the form of more fever, more body ache as compared to the rest of the group. It's also younger the people. There have been more instances of certain reactions as compared to the elderly. But saying that, people are having different experiences with this. But as I mentioned, particularly for the COVID vaccine, the people who already had contacted the disease before had floating antibodies regarding the same. So when a new antigen, this vaccine is what we are just introducing a dead virus into the patient's body to develop an antibody against it. So once this essentially enters, the antibodies which are already present in the patient who's contracted the disease would start rebelling against it and will have serious reaction in this patient. But none of these reactions are that bad, which cannot be controlled by simple analgesics like over-the-counter medications like paracetamol. So I would suggest that one should not really shy away from taking the vaccine just because of certain misconceptions about it or minor reactions which are known with any kind of vaccination.
Oh, right.
So, why is mucormycosis more prevalent in the second wave than the previous one?
Wow, you've asked a question which was there which had made the headlines in the last couple of months, isn't it? Every newspaper was talking about the black fungus. In fact, our patients who used to get admitted, with COVID as well, they used to first not ask about their COVID status. They should just ask, "Sir, mujhe wo black fungus to nahi hua na?" So I mean, they were so scared about this. You're absolutely right. Mucormycosis of the black fungus, which made itself known this year during the second wave, has been there for a while. It's a fungus which is ubiquitous, is there in the air, but more so seen in the second wave, which I think is for a couple of reasons. Uh, I would say diabetes per se and high sugars has always been a risk factor for any kind of fungal infection. As you kids must be aware, the two modalities of treatment which are considered to be really effective against COVID are the blood thinning medications and steroids. In the first wave of COVID, the steroid which was used in India was a bit different, was methylprednisolone, and in the second wave, more and more people started using a steroid called as dexamethasone, which is known to increase sugars more so as compared to methylprednisolone. So I would say a combination of these two, having sugars which were uncontrolled in few of the patients, as well as steroids, a change of steroids was possibly responsible for the increase in the cases of mucormycosis. Also, there was no uniformity in the dosages or the duration of steroids which were being used as well. Some people or some doctors are also of the belief that the second variant that we are seeing in the second wave, essentially, the variant which we're seeing in the second wave, it particularly affects the iron metabolism in our body, essentially making it more susceptible to the fungus. So all these things put together, I would say, have increased the incidence, as well as the use of multiple agents, which were put forth. You must have read in newspapers. One day you used to hear, okay, this drug is good for COVID. The other day you used to hear, okay, this drug is good for COVID. One of the other supportive modalities used was a capsule zinc capsule, okay, which again is considered to be promoting the growth of mucormycosis in the body. So I would say all these things put together would be my answer to your question, that why mucormycosis has been so rampant during the second wave.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, in your opinion, has the Indian government taken productive measures that are plausible for the prevention of virus?
My God, you're asking me this question on a live session which will be aired on YouTube. It is going on YouTube. Anyways, I would just answer this question saying that it's always easy to blame the government for anything, isn't it? With the kind of population density that we have, the education level of the people around, the school of thoughts, it is not easy. And I think our government is trying its best to try to bring the things under control. But I would still say that, yes, there is scope for improvement. Presently, I would say, yes, ramping up the vaccination, trying to make the vaccination centers work 24/7. Government is trying to, preparing for the third wave now, the government is trying to set up many pediatric task forces, which include the pediatricians, neonatologists, trying to free up more beds in the hospital, trying to make all the drugs available. I would say that we have seen the best of the best developed worlds, whom we consider and look up to. And most of the students, go there for further studies, for their MS, for their post-graduation, struggling with the present pandemic, right? When their government, when having an access to everything, found it difficult and struggled with the present pandemic, I think the Indian government has done decently a good job. I think we also need to answer this question first. We as responsible citizens, have we taken, adequate preventive measures as responsible citizens of this country? Have we tried to avoid mass gatherings? Have we tried to avoid weddings? Have we tried to avoid, parties? Have we tried to flouting, rules? Just in a couple of days ago, there was a photograph of, tourists going to that Kempty Falls. And it was so, forget the social distancing, there were tens and thousands of people, next to each other under that waterfall, having fun. And most of them seem to be the non-vaccinated gang. One of my maths teacher, whilst I was in school, had told me then, instead of thinking what your country or what your government is doing, has done for you, or what is doing for you. One has to think, what are you doing, or what have you been doing for your society, for your government, for your country? I think it should start with us, isn't it? If we follow the ubiquitous rules of SMS, the sanitization, hand sanitization, masking, and social distancing religiously, and get vaccinated, without following the WhatsApp gossips as well as the Google Nyan, I think we'll be doing much. We'll be contributing our bit and aid the government to find this pandemic faster.
Yeah, that's true, sir.
I'm glad you agree with this.
Perfect. So now we have one question. Well, we've all recently heard that there's a lot of violence going on against doctors because people can't believe that doctors couldn't make them better, and it's apparently their fault that there are things happening, grave illnesses, and even death, perhaps. So I just want to know what your point of view of this current predicament is.
Violence against doctors is not something which is new. It's been there for a while. One has to understand the origin or the thought process behind why people are getting violent, isn't it? I sometimes feel there is there's no fire without fuel as well. So I think there could be an instance in which both the parties could be involved. One has to also think about the emotions, what the family members are going through, the loss of a dear and a near one. And as I told you, particularly the second wave has been really disastrous for the families. It's, instances in which losing your husband or a wife who's, having a 1-month-old child, losing your only son, losing the breadwinner of the family, people, and not getting help from anyone. I think the emotions are very high. Possibly this brings out the worst sometimes for the people, from the people essentially. But obviously, unfortunately, doctors or the medical team is at the receiving end. This may not change immediately. Obviously, this comes with proper counseling. I think at the end of everything, I've realized, though, because I particularly have not gone through this, I have had two of my colleagues who had to experience this, but I've just realized one thing, right from the time the patient gets admitted to your hospital or under your care, if you're able to communicate to the family adequately, show them that you've done, or show them as well as do the right things for the patient, one can avoid such things from happening. At the same time, one needs to have a backup security always posted in certain areas or certain places in the hospital where such incidences are very common, particularly the emergency department, where the patients are brought in, and the first-hand doctors, as well as in the intensive care units, where we end up delivering the bad news to the patient's family.
That makes sense. Well, I hope people learn and get a little better in dealing with their emotions. Change that.
So, if time permits, we'll be taking a few questions from the audience, which is watching this program live. Saransh will be able to guide us with that. Over to you, Saransh.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kushi. Well, first of all, we have some really, really supportive comments from the chat. Some of them, well, a little weird, but yeah. The people over here are really, really happy that you're out there helping us with, well, everything. And those patients who really have nowhere else to go, you're helping them. So first of all, they want to send you a round of applause. They sent clapping emojis your way. So yeah, second of all, I see that you have really motivated some people over here to become doctors in the future and just be able to have that caring hand over others, over patients, and just making others' lives better. So yeah. Well, the first question that I see over here is so what would you personally consider when thinking about whether to open schools or whether to not open them? What are going to be your boundaries and restraints over there, in your point of view?
I think being a father of 2 kids as well, I'm also looking forward with the schools being open as ASAP. It's not been easy for the kids being at home, is it? I mean, for the last 1.5 years, it's been I would say it's an emotional turmoil. It's a roller coaster of all kinds of things, being at home, losing that, presence of peers around you, uh, sitting in front of the device continuously for 3 to 4 hours and trying to, put forth your best. It's not been easy. I would say that different countries are at different stages of unlocking phenomenon. So I think I personally feel that one has to look into opening schools with the thought process that how well we are prepared as a community, as a state, and as a country to deal with just in case if there is a surge of such cases. So this brings us to the fundamental question: are we prepared enough? So for that, one has to look into yourself. How is your school? What kind of school is it? Is it a boarding school? Is what kind of facilities you've got? What is the kind of hygiene or what kind of disinfection processes do we have in place? Uh, at the same time, what are we attached to any kind of a healthcare uh, hospital as a backup just in case if we need to? Is there a good kind of a communication or education amongst the teachers, the parents, the doctors, and the students? What kind of discipline which needs to be maintained in school? Saying that, my sister who lives in UK, the kids over there have been going to school for a while. In fact, there have been studies done in the schools in UK. They've noticed that there has been no increase in the cases amongst kids who are going to school, as long as the background, disease is kept under control. What do I mean by the background disease itself? Is that amongst the adults and the young adults, the overall disease burden is less. Just by opening up school itself should not cause any major havoc. This is what I personally believe. I too am personally looking forward for the schools to be open as soon as possible. But at the same time, I feel it should be a process in which everyone should feel comfortable doing it, isn't it? I mean, the teacher should feel comfortable. For that, we need to have the vaccination done for all the school teachers, the other allied health staff in the schools, and hopefully soon the kids as well. Though that should not be a deterrent from opening the schools.
That makes sense. Same with my family in the US. They've been going to school for a while now. So yeah. We just got another question in the chat. It's about the difference between antigens and antibodies. I suppose a lot of people here are not too clear about it. So if you could please elaborate.
Right. So antigen is is when the virus attacks. Virus essentially, when the COVID virus, when it is attacking your body, that's the antigen which is entering your body, or the virus which is entering the body. The response that our body is, putting forth towards this virus and producing certain helper cells in the bodies are called as the antibodies. So that makes the treatment of this particular disease into two phases as well. When one contracts the disease, the treatment process first initially involves reducing the viral load or reducing the antigen load by giving certain antiviral agents, which you must have heard about: Fabiflu, Favipiravir, Remdesivir, and so on and so forth. At the same time, some people have got an exaggerated immune response. They just produce too much of antibodies or too much of, the immune system of each person is different. So some people just produce an overwhelming response to this particular viral antigen. So one has to use medications like steroids and other immune modulating agents to bring down that response. So in short, antigen is what the body is encountering as a foreign particle in your body, and antibody is your body's defense mechanism against that particular viral antigen.
Well, that's clear now. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. Okay, another question I see that's coming up next is about a new topic, telemedicine. I see that some people here want to know if you believe in telemedicine and what do you think the future for the same is?
Well, I think India has adapted wonderfully to the present pandemic and bringing about changes not only, as I told you, about the schooling sector, the education sector, in our healthcare sector as well. Now, telemedicine has been going on for a while. Okay, I mean, telemedicine is not something which is new, but as a concept and as for our patients, I think it has been reintroduced or introduced in a different way during the present COVID pandemic. It's been there in all the developed world for a while. Like I remember whilst working in Australia, we used to look after remotely ICUs which were 200 to 300 kilometers away from our big hospital where I was working essentially. So just to telemedicine. So I think telemedicine has got a tremendous potential. It is in fact bringing about specialist care to the areas where it was not available before, isn't it? At the same time, during the present pandemic, when people were could not visit the doctors for their routine visits or the follow-up visits, telemedicine showed them the way to have that initial, just to have that consult with the doctor. I think we still do feel better by just looking at your doctor and he's coming from him that you are doing fine, this is the medication which you need to take. So that kind of a visual impact, I think we still yearn for, and so that is something which telemedicine has made possible. So in fact, most of the hospitals have adapted to this pretty well, and in fact, in our hospital as well, most of our departments have the facility of telemedicine, wherein people in the comfort of their own home can get the opinion from their own doctor, as well as you can group in other specialists as well. So you can have a kind of a video conferencing call, and you can have a multi-speciality visit with just the same time. So I think telemedicine is the way to go, and I think it's for a very bright future. So any one of you who's developing an app for telemedicine or something, I think will have a very good future as well.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. I suppose the question was in the context of India. So the next question I have is a little bit of a personal question. I hope you can answer it. And it's about what your family thinks about you being on the front line, dealing with COVID, and you being at a high risk of exposure, and if they really support you, and if there's a message you want to send across to the families of other doctors around India, I suppose.
Yeah. To answer this, I would say my father is a physician who stopped working now. My mother is a post-renal transplant patient. So she's had a renal transplant 3 years ago. So as one knows, my father is 75, my mom is also post-renal transplant elderly on immunosuppression. So this was my real worry when we initially faced the COVID pandemic in March 2020, that I've got 2 people at home who are very, very high risk of contracting this, and I do not know what's none of us knew at that point of time that how this disease is going to unfold itself. I did share these thoughts with my parents, and in fact, they as well as my wife and my kids, essentially, they were my major support group, who just told me one thing, that you just need to do what you need to do. Don't worry, we are there to support you as well. So I think those were the kind of supporting words which I got from my parents, as well as from my spouse, as well as from my kids. Because personally, for the initial first 2-3 months as well, whilst I was working in the COVID ICU, I used to isolate myself in the house. So it was not easy. It was different for my kids. It was, it's different when you are living in the same house and not being, there for a particular, time frame. So I think it was difficult, but I think because of the support of my family, I could go through these difficult times. And I think I'm pretty sure most of the other doctors as well do have the similar kind of a support.
Well, thank you for that personalized answer. I really hope your words resonate with the families of other doctors. Okay. Whilst scrolling through the chat, the final question I can see is actually about something children are rather curious about. They want to start swimming again. They want to have physical outdoor activities. So they want to know if you can really transport the virus through swimming pool water while maybe just taking a sip of the water, I suppose, or if it can travel through water, basically.
Well, I think with the developing information, I think every day we get new information and new evidence about this particular, virus. Initially, we were told it's more of a droplet. Then they say that it could be airborne as well. The possibility of it spreading to water, well, as our government of India, as well as the state government, has not allowed the swimming pools to operate uh, thus far. So I think the question of your friends or anyone who's asking this question would not arise because swimming pools are not opening up in a hurry anyways, isn't it? So in a nutshell, that anything which brings people very close to each other, there will always be a possibility of spreading the virus, isn't it?
Okay, thank you so much. I think there's this one last question someone really wants answered. It's about how would you say that, or what differences exist between, well, Covishield and Covaxin right now? And is there one particular one you would recommend more than the other? And if not, why?
Well, I would say both. Uh, in the present era, I would say there is a bit of a vaccine war going on. Okay. Uh, I know a few of the patients who did not believe in either of the two. You say, oh, I don't want Covishield, I don't want Covaxin, I'll wait for Sputnik to come to India. By the time Sputnik came to India, it was too late. He was already on the ventilator. Uh, we've had patients now because we get patients coming to us post vaccination as well. We've noticed that there is no great difference as far as people who have taken Covaxin versus Covishield. Though the majority of people coming to us in Pune itself are post Covishield as well, but most of them are having a mild kind of a disease, if at all they present to us in the hospital. So to answer your question, I think both the vaccines have got approval from the DGCI. Both have gone through a particular process of safety check and its efficacy against the present variants which are available. So I would say instead of thinking too much, get the one which you're getting as soon as possible. The only thing I've realized is that the Covishield at the moment is being recognized by the international community. So for students and for other people who want to travel, maybe if possible, if Covishield is available, that may be something which people may think about or prefer over Covaxin. A Prime Minister of India has taken Covaxin, so can't argue against that.
Well, that definitely makes sense. Okay, there's one question that I personally want to ask you. I'll just keep that as the last one. Sorry for that again and again. If you had to pinpoint one moment in your entire time of fighting this pandemic and being at the front lines, one moment which was the most, well, rememberable for you, what would that be?
As that, I mean, I also, as I told you in the beginning, that I have specialized in extracorporeal therapies, of which the one which we make available in our hospital is called as the ECMO, which you must have heard. We had a patient who was on this ECMO therapy in our hospital, and most of the other doctors had given up on him. He stayed with us for almost close to 2 months. He was weak as a, was just not able to move his finger at all. And, at the end of 2 months, he went through and ECMO therapy is essentially considered to be the last therapy available for a patient who's got failed or failing lungs. It's a support for the lungs till the time the lungs get better. So he went through that entire rigmarole of going through this ECMO procedure, then getting the ECMO machine out, which gradually came off the ventilator. He still was not able to move a finger. His family was worried about what happens to him next. He, has got a young son at home who was keen to play with his father. With ongoing rehab and close to almost 1.5 months in the hospital, this chap was able to stand up on his feet. He just came and met me 2 weeks ago, that too walking with a walker, and we just clicked a photo together, which we got with him outside a temple which we have outside a hospital. So I think that when I saw him walking towards me, the entire journey of those 2 months with the thought process and the entire emotions, the entire hard work of not only just me, it's the entire team of our intensive care team and to see such good results, that was something which I would remember forever.
That's a remarkable experience. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you so much for asking all of the questions. So I hand over the rest.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. You've been a wonderful host.
Thank you.
Okay, whilst I know that the list of questions is never ending and we kept tacking one after the other on right at the end there, unfortunately the session is not endless, even though we might want it to be. So thank you so much for answering our questions so thoroughly and sharing your experiences with all of us. It has truly been so eye-opening, and your stories are so compelling and remarkable, and it really puts things into perspective for all of us. So on that note, to close off this session, I would like to request Ishita to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ananya, and thank you, sir, for answering all our questions. A wonderful evening to our most valued and honorable chief guest, Dr. Nilesh Mahale, sir, Head Symbiosis School Central Directorate, Dr. Gargi Mitra, ma'am, Head Symbiosis Center for Emotional Well-being, Dr. Girija Mahale, the principals of all Symbiosis schools, our teachers, parents, and dear students. Now we come towards the end of this insightful session. It is indeed my honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks. We would like to acknowledge our gratitude towards Dr. Nilesh Mahale, sir, for gracing this occasion with his valuable presence in spite of his busy schedule. We would like to thank Dr. Gargi Mitra, Head Symbiosis School Central Directorate, and Dr. Girija Mahale, Head Symbiosis Center for Emotional Well-being, for their constant encouragement and support. We would also like to thank the principals of all Symbiosis schools and our teachers for believing in us and motivating us to achieve higher goals. And of course, this event wouldn't have been possible without the IT support. So thank you so much, Pravin sir, for arranging all of this. A big thank you to Mrs. Sangeeta Rishi Pathak from SKU. We also thank Medha ma'am from Symbiosis School, Prabhat Road, Pradnya ma'am from Symbiosis International School, Shalaka ma'am from Pune Police Public School, and Simran ma'am from Symbiosis School, Nashik, who guided us in making this event a grand success. We thank our parents and students for being such an encouraging audience. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, stay positive, but test negative. Goodbye and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? Yeah, Praveen, are you there?
I'm trying to find him.
Because, okay, no, now we are not, yeah,
No,
it's
we are not.
fine.
Yeah.
I can see live only Dr. Girija now. Surprisingly, look, but I can see you still live.
I am alive, ma'am.